Hello and welcome to another Monday Night live stream. I hope you all are having a good Monday. In tonight's stream, we're going to talk about local transmission, or I should say transmission in general, from small scale to large, local to national. We're going to talk about microwave, satellite, cellular, wireless, different forms of broadcast, internet possibly. Who knows what we'll get into tonight? It's a random Monday Night live stream. It can be, I should say, random at times. So let's see who's here tonight. We have David, who's always early, and smashed the like button before the stream even started. So if you could give me a like and a subscribe, I'd appreciate it. Keith Bennett is in the house. Welcome in. He's got a seat in the front row. Oh, there are more than 3 seats available. It's the internet, so in theory, it's unlimited. Toro is in the house. Welcome in. Hopefully, everyone's doing well tonight. As I said, Eric from New York is here. Welcome in, Eric. I'm sure others will join here shortly. So, if you missed, or I should say, before we get too far, let's do our weekly update of where we stand, or where I stand on my channel. Currently, 1,578 subscribers and 2,826 watch hours, which I think is slightly below where it was last week, but I could be wrong. I feel like I took a little dip because I missed that 1 week and then, got to make it back up. And so also, if you have not, or if you remember, if you've been a long time subscriber, we talked about transmission about a year and a half ago. And so I recently went in, actually today, and I kind of hid a lot of those older videos that maybe need to be redone or updated. And so I'm going to kind of use those as my cue going forward about topics to revisit. Some of that stuff was just kind of done upstairs. It was done maybe in not the best presentation. I didn't have any graphics. And so I really want to step up my presentation and include more graphics and more photos. That's one of the reasons why I ended up moving down here in the basement with a fly pack, is because OBS and graphics just were always a struggle for me, because OBS doesn't allow you to have more than like 20 high-res graphics. And the media, what are they called on here? Media, oh my God, whatever the cache is on the Blackmagic can store more than that. And it's a lot easier to swap photos in and out. So I want to kind of go back and redo some of these streams with more photos and graphics. And so hopefully you don't mind, if you've been a viewer for a while, hopefully you don't mind seeing some of the topics revisited, at least in some way, shape, or form. So Eric is a big fan of the numbers and revisiting content. Ernesto is here. Welcome in. Sorry, my email's blowing up here for a second, so just want to check that. So let's get started. Looks like everything else is going well. Looks like there's 4 current viewers and 4 likes, so that's 100%. That's awesome. So let's talk about various forms of transmission. I don't really have a graphic for this. Like I just talked about doing more graphics, but unfortunately this stream is kind of last minute. So the first form of transmission that most people are going to deal with is probably wireless, or this is just like local transmission, not internet transmission, not like whatever. It's going to basically be wireless. So you have, you buy a wireless microphone, or you buy a wireless video transmitter. You have a cell phone and you're on Wi-Fi, stuff like that. So there's the 2.4 gig, there's the 5 gigahertz, and there's a 6 gigahertz now. And But what if don't want to rely on an unlicensed frequency because those unlicensed frequencies present you issues. Let's say you have a professional audio microphone that doesn't use those frequencies. And I want to address this first because there's a way to do this correctly and there's a way to do this not correctly. Let's say you want a frequency, but you don't want to use one of the unlicensed frequencies. Like let's say you have a wireless microphone. Well, the wireless microphones are actually using the TV frequencies, and you can do a scan on those and it'll find you a channel. I would reach out to your local SBE chapter. SBE is Society of Broadcast Engineers. They maintain a frequency coordination effort, if you will, and they will help frequency coordinate events, especially large events. So let's say you go to a football game, or let's say the NFL draft comes to your neighborhood, like you're in Detroit or Seattle, or where's it next year? Green Bay. Let's say you're in Green Bay and you want to use some wireless gear and you happen to be next door to Lambeau Field. Well, when the NFL comes to town or big events happen, they have to frequency coordinate. And therefore, that's where members of the SBE come in and they will take over and they will help you frequency coordinate. So before you go on using a licensed frequency, you have to, or you should talk to someone first to make sure that you are not going to create a problem for somebody else, because in this world where everyone wants to be wireless, we all got to play the same game and therefore frequency coordinate. So I want to put that first and foremost because some of these methods of transmission, you can use, but maybe you need to coordinate. Maybe you need to talk to someone. Maybe you need to buy access to a frequency. And so it'd be good things for you to know what you can and can't do before you just start going to buy wireless gear. So disclaimers out front. I want to just throw that out there first and foremost. Kevin Roush, I think is how you pronounce that. Hello from Columbus, Ohio. Jeremy is in the house. Welcome in. Yes, use the SBE. Good advice. So I bring this up just because, like I said, there are certain events where basically you have to frequency coordinate, because if you're in their area, say you go to an NFL stadium and you don't frequency coordinate, they will find you and they will kick you out. I've heard this happening multiple times to small and large media outlets. So it is very important to frequency coordinate when you're not using the usual unlicensed 2.4, 5, 6 gigahertz frequencies. So, and I mentioned wireless first too because I know Joe was going to talk or wanted me to talk about the new Teradek. I think is it Teradek? 6 gigahertz stuff. I can, the Bolt 6. So, so this is the new Teradek 6 gigahertz wireless video transmission system. I find this statement to be very hard to believe because anytime you process video and then encode it for retransmission, I feel like you have to introduce some sort of delay. So this number I find very interesting. So this new stuff, which I've never used this before, but looks very interesting, promises 5,000 feet of range. And that's got to be direct line of sight. There's no way that's going through walls or people. It says 0 delay, 10-bit 422 video, which is great. It offers encryption, which is kind of interesting, but I understand everything these days basically has to have encryption. You could debate the pros and cons of whether or not your video transmission needs encryption. I would argue it does not need encryption and should not be encrypted because you're just adding complications. And, in theory, this takes processing power. This means there's a chance for delay here. So I don't know why they say no delay, because if you're encrypting things and you're encoding it and you're transmitting it, this isn't like this takes time. This chips can't do this fast. I mean, it does it fast, but to say it's zero delay, I don't know what that word means in this context, because yeah. So there's several Bolt products, wireless gear, but notice none of this looks cheap. And as you know on my channel, we talk about the cheap ways and the expensive ways. And I think when it comes to wireless, I think you get what you pay for. If you're going with a cheap wireless transmitter unit, you're probably going to have more issues than if you go with a more expensive one. I personally have used Teradek products. They do work fairly well. But I've also had a situation where we were at a football stadium for graduation using Teradek products, and it worked until graduation started because people weren't there until graduation started. And even though we had direct line of sight, and I'm talking direct line of sight to the press box, like we stuck the antenna out the window of the press box, and the other camera was on the 50-yard line in the center of the field and literally had direct line of sight. We were still having breakup issues because there were so many people around, so many devices were on this frequency that no matter what we did, we were having breakup issues. Now, it wasn't constant. It was kind of coming and going as the ceremony went along. But it was a big issue because we were using that camera, the one that was having the breakup issues, as the main audio source because, well, various reasons. But we did not run the audio separately from the video, and therefore we were experiencing audio dropouts as well as video dropouts. So when you're talking about wireless transmission, it's got to be thought through. It's got to be thought out, like, okay, what can happen? And don't put all your eggs in one basket, because if you put your audio on your video and your video goes out, now your audio's out and you don't have the option to take, a bailout camera because you got no audio. And as most of us realize, especially if you do YouTube, people need good audio, but will suffer through bad video. But they will not suffer through bad audio. So, I guess lesson learned. Don't put your audio with your video if you can help it, because if you lose one, you lose both. So, like I said, I've never used this transmission system, but it does sound interesting, and I know that Joe is going to be using this for an upcoming event he is doing, and so hopefully he will share his experience with this. 4K HDR. Oh, that supports a lot of stuff there. And so when you're talking about wireless stuff, this is kind of interesting too. So you have, when it comes to wireless, you have different polarities. And so knowing what polarity you're using is very helpful. And notice that, there are vertically polarized antennas, there are horizontally polarized antennas. And what I find interesting to note is that when you're using horizontal, your ranges are shorter. So I find that a little bit interesting. But if you looked up here before on these products, notice this one right here, or I should say these, have both. And I can tell you from experience that when you have, let's say, because on the Teradek units we use, they have 5 antennas. And if you put all in 5 antennas like this, you will have more breakup than if you do this. So basically what I'm saying is you take, antennas and you just kind of aim them different directions, and some go horizontal and some go vertical, and one goes to the left and one goes to the right, because as wireless signals are transmitted in the air, they bounce. And most digital signals these days are designed to bounce. And they embrace that. So they have basically mechanisms that, can add them together, even though they may arrive different times, and therefore, can deal with that bouncing, because things bounce. And I actually learned this a long time ago when I first was learning how to use a microwave truck at work. And microwave for TV broadcast is 2 gig. I forget the actual, frequencies, but it's in the 2 gigahertz range. And I was learning how to do a live shot one time, and I was just having a hell of a time getting tuned into the station. I'm downtown. I'm trying to get to this transmitter site. And because it's downtown, there's a lot of tall buildings. And so I was trying to make this happen, and I noticed as I kind of panned this way, I'm bouncing off of a building. Like I'm aimed towards a building, and the station was like, "We see you." And I'm like, "But wait a minute, I'm supposed to be pointing over here, and I'm pointing this direction, and you're seeing me better? What is going on?" And it was bouncing. It was literally hitting the glass, steel, metal building that was next to me and bouncing it, and it had a clearer shot via the bounce than my antenna did by looking directly at the site. So what I'm saying is that things bounce. And so therefore, if you're using these new antennas or these new systems, bend the fingers. If you bend the antennas, I always say bend the fingers, but bend this antennas so that you're not doing this, because the signal's going to arrive, here. But what happens if it's slightly off angle? What happens if it's 45 degrees? Well, now you're only getting part of the signal. So you kind of want to make sure you, when it comes to wireless transmission, that you have directional, which I did notice this thing offers. Here's a directional antenna that you can use to point in one direction. Which, again, in my scenario where I was in a football stadium, a directional antenna would have been very helpful, because we did not have anything coming from behind the receiver. There was no one behind us that we cared about. There was nobody really on either side of where we were at, where this receiver was at. The only thing we cared about was the field cameras. There were 2 of them, and we wanted the things in front of us. So I wish we would have had a directional antenna, because we probably would have had no issues when it came to wireless, because we would have been directionally focused onto the ground and avoiding all the other things around. One of the things I find interesting, these days is every car has a hotspot in it. Police cars have multiple radios in them, hotspots. So, you may say, well, I'm near the parking lot. Well, the problem is every one of those cars has a radio in it, and everyone has a cell phone which has a radio, and the kids who are 5 years old have an iPad. It probably has a radio in it too. So literally every person and every car, it's not exactly true, but you know what I'm saying, just we're going that route. Basically every person plus their car has a cellular radio, and it's transmitting. Some of those cars have Wi-Fi hotspots in them for your devices. So they're transmitting in the same frequency that you're using for wireless transmission. So, so you're just, so when I start out with wireless, you kind of need to think about, okay, what am I getting into? Do I have this built in a way that is going to work? Line of sight's important. If you can get it on a licensed frequency, that's better. But also, I would consider backup plans. Like I said in my story earlier about the audio riding on the video. In hindsight, had I had more prep time, I would have ran the audio feed directly up into the press box so that no matter what happens to the cameras, at least I have the audio. And we didn't do it that way, and the broadcast suffered because of that. So let's go back to the chat for a second, see who's here. David came in. That is great. Welcome here. Yeah, they want you to encrypt the stuff, but that means you got to have latency. I don't understand how they can say 0 delay. Steve is in from Lima. Welcome in. Yes, Jeremy did in fact Jeremy did in fact request Joe do a review video. This was in last night's 2-hour stream that Jeremy did. I don't think I'm going to go 2 hours tonight, but you know. Jacob Johnson is here. Welcome in. Yeah, reflections can actually improve the signal. The way these new digital stuff works, it's just kind of crazy. Speaking of Joe, welcome in. Yes, we are surrounded by RF all the time. Unless you build a Faraday cage, you're surrounded by RF. What did you miss? Well, basically, we just started talking about the wireless stuff, and I talked about how you should frequency coordinate, if at all possible, the consequences of not frequency coordinating, and then we talked about unlicensed frequencies and started on the Bolt 6 because it was relevant to both my stream and the stream that we were talking from earlier, so I just started talking about it, and so now you're caught up. Hello, we've talked about you and review. You're going to do that Teradek thing. Oh, I forget what I don't know what TIL is, but SBE is Society of Broadcast Engineers, and most markets have them. So if you are in a bigger city, I guarantee you have one. If you're in a smaller one, like I think you're from Lima, right? I think Steve's from Lima. Yes. So if you're from Lima, I don't know that Lima has an SBE group, but I know the bigger cities usually do. And so SBE is the one that's supposed to coordinate. It's a volunteer thing, and it's just kind of like the unwritten rule. In fact, most big broadcasters know about the SBE and will reach out ahead of time. And I've seen these emails before where basically, you know, the golf tournament comes to town or whatever, insert name a sporting event. They will reach out to the SBE frequency coordinator and say, hey, we're going to be in town. Here's our wireless microphone frequencies. Or please provide us with a list of known frequencies in your area. And so one of the things I do along with the other stations is we keep a database. Hold on a second. We keep a listing of all of our gear. So, and then about once a year, I email the other stations and say, here's our list of gear as it currently stands. And they email me a list of their gear. And so we maintain a list of like, hey, I'm on these frequencies, you're on these frequencies, as just kind of good common courteous to each other and say, hey, I'm here, you're there, we're going to play nicely together. And then what happens is those big events like golf tournaments, football games, whatever, they come to town and they ask for a listing like, hey, what are you using? And that way they can avoid the known frequencies that we're using. That saves them time. And then in theory, that makes a better production for everybody, because if we're going to cover those, events, we show up with our gear and we're allowed to use it, but we don't want to interfere with the actual event happening. So it just makes it nicer for everybody. But like I said, in some places like the NFL draft, or any NFL stadium, I should say, if you don't frequency coordinate, they will kick you out of the venue. Now, you could go outside the venue and use your wireless frequency, whatever it is, But inside the venue, where they have control over, they will regulate that the best they can, and they will kick you out of the event. So let me go back here. Joe says, I may need that review. Yes, you should. You have not posted on your channel in some time, so I think you should do that. Oh, Eric says, today I learned about, okay, so that's what TIL stands for. Joe says, Teradek has a licensed version. It's like $15,000. Yep, I can imagine. Oh, you're in Lima for work. Okay. I would assume there's one in Columbus. It's a pretty big city. Yeah, so yeah, if you're going to convention centers, you probably have a list. They probably know, generally speaking, what they can and can't use or what works best, I should say. Ooh, yeah, that's not good. Most devices can scan and kind of tell you where the best thing is. I know we were doing a thing the other day with our wireless microphones, and it showed you the whole spectrum and kind of like pointed out where things were. And so that was pretty cool software. I wonder if I could do that no, I don't think I could do that as a demonstration. Maybe I could record some video of that, but yeah, who knows? Might be an idea. So that's kind of wireless. Basically, you have lots of different options. Like I said, you have Hollyland, you have Teradek. I would go with Teradek if possible. There are other companies out there that let you do that. And this isn't just video. This goes for audio. You're using the Rode wireless systems out there, but then you also have like Sennheiser makes professional microphones that use TV channels. And we have, of course, the professional microphones at work. And what I found kind of was interesting the other day, I guess this was about a year ago. I always say the other day, and it's actually longer than that. But basically was that we bought a Rode wireless kit because we wanted to mic up a coach on a baseball field. And apparently our microphones, our professional microphones, do not go far enough to work in a baseball field, which I thought was kind of odd. But I was like, whatever, we'll just buy this Rode wireless and we'll try it out. And my first thought is that I wanted to buy the Rode wireless system because I'm giving this to a player or a coach. Well, I'm not, but somebody is. And frankly, if they're a player and it gets damaged, then I'm only out like $200. Whereas if our wireless transmitters get damaged, they're $500 or $600. Therefore, sure, give the cheap one to the coach. That'll be better. But then I was told that the cheaper Rode wireless system actually worked further out in the field than ours. And I was like, well, that just doesn't make sense. So we have some sort of issue because I can't imagine that the Rode wireless works that much better than our professional microphones do. But that's what I'm being told. So that never really did go look into that, but I really should because it didn't make a lot of sense to me. I was just looking at it from a financial point of view, like, hey, if it gets damaged, then we're only at $200 instead of $600. Joe says, look up Shure accent. Okay. Well, that definitely is not cheap. So this is a dual channel portable wireless receiver. Yeah, this looks well, that's a weird connector. I'm guessing this is designed to sit in some kind of rack. Yeah, I'm thinking this is some kind of rack kit or rack mountable thing. But yes, here. So I was talking about the broadcast frequencies earlier. So these professional wireless mics are designed to work in a broadcast frequency. Yeah, in 470 to 636 is where TV channels are. And so these are designed to work with local TV stations in mind. So you have to make sure that you do a channel scan and that you're not using a frequency that a TV station is using, because TV has the right to be there. Your wireless microphone does not. So you have to move out of the way. This is another reason why I was confused, because at these lower frequencies, 470 versus 2.4 gig, the 470 should go further, and go through things easier. And yet I'm being told the Rode does better. So just a footnote, I guess. Yes, and even Joe's saying, Rode runs in 2.4. They work great until they don't. Oh, it's their line of digital top of the end. Yeah, so those things probably work out really well. Craig, welcome in. I don't think I see you. Did I see you earlier? I don't think I did. So welcome in. Yeah, it's probably not Columbus. It probably is Central Ohio. Would be the overarching one. Yes, Eric does point out that those are UHF frequencies. That is correct. So yeah, so I wanted to talk about wireless stuff, and then so one of the things I mentioned earlier, and speaking of UHF, I guess it reminded me, is microwave. Now, most stations, these are the microwave trucks that you've seen in video, movies, TV shows. You probably see them out and about. As a broadcaster, we're allowed to use the broadcast auxiliary service, and it's a frequency, or it's a set of frequencies in the 2 gig range, that is basically, I think there's 9 channels. And again, that's one of those things where that's like a handshake deal between the SBE. So, one station might have channels 1 and 2. The other station might have 3 and 4, 4 and 5, so on and 6. One local station has 1 and 6, and we have 4 and 5. I mean, I don't know why it is that way, but it is. And so these are frequencies designed to have intercity, like in the city, microwave transmissions. And we are allowed to go, I think it's 45 miles from our transmitter site. We can use this frequency. And 45 miles is quite a long way. Microwave typically doesn't go that far, so you're usually good in that range. And these are what, for years and years and years, the trucks used to do live shots, or news stations, I should say, used to do live shots. We do not use them much anymore because of cellular bonding and their backpacks, as we call them. But they still exist, and they're still good to have, because in a digital form, they can do, technically speaking, they can do up to 20 megs a second in terms of I think it's 8 megahertz wide. So they can do like 20 megs a second. Now, that won't go very far, but, hey. And so usually we do more like 10. And the lower the bit rate, the more what's called FEC, or forward error correction, we use, and therefore the more reliable dependable, if you will, the signal is. And so one of the things that we do in my station, and I figured this out, was we can actually split that 8 megahertz into 2 channels. So we can send back 2 different signals in the one 8 megahertz feed. And we do that all the time now. So whenever we do a special production, which is usually when the microwave comes out, we actually send 2 different video feeds in one microwave signal. And we use that all the time now because we don't have a lot of trucks anymore, nor do we have a lot of receive sites. So to maximize our equipment, or our broadcast, we will put 2 video signals into one transmission, and then send it back to the station. And at the station, we break it back out into 2 different paths. We also do this with satellite. And so one of the things I found interesting years ago was that we were paying, $5 a minute, which is what some people used to pay for satellite transmission. And that's $5 a minute. We now pay like 2 something, and we get more bandwidth than we used to. So I use essentially the same encoders that I use for microwave can also do satellite. And so whether it's microwave or satellite, I will take these 2 feeds, combine them, and then transmit them via microwave, via the Massa truck, or via satellite out to space and back to maximize the amount of video that I can get through while keeping costs down. Because it's only about $20 more an hour to be able to do 2 video feeds than it is for 1 video feed. So if you're already paying for satellite time, to pay $20 more an hour and get a second path is easy. It's easy math. We've even bought the larger window and then just didn't really use it because we didn't know if we were going to need it, because you can't add it after the fact. So you have to order it, and then if you don't use it, you don't use it, but at least you've ordered it, if that makes any sense. So, like I said, we still have trucks. We still use microwave trucks, the satellite trucks. Most stations don't, but when it comes to reliability or disaster recovery, it's good to have your own stuff, because in a lot of these events, I shouldn't say a lot of these events. Most of the time, when you do an event, if it's a small event, you're fine, well, regardless of what it is. But let's say all of a sudden the big show comes to town, and now you're doing an event, and there's a golf tournament or there's a football game, and the crowd's huge. Well, then what used to work for your small event probably won't work anymore, because the 2.4 frequencies are used or the microphone frequencies are used. So it's always good to have a backup plan whenever you're doing anything wireless, period. Whether it's wireless video, wireless audio, Wi-Fi for phones, it's good to have backups, because when it comes to wireless, it could go down and it's beyond your control most of the time. So you have to just deal. So I should have chat open right now. Hello. Oops. Welcome in. I don't speak Spanish, so yeah, I don't speak. Have you had satellite issues, the solar issues? No, we have not. Starlink was working hard. I have my theories about that. Also, Starlink satellites are in our essentially atmospheric kind of thing, aren't they? Like, because the satellites we use are way out here, and I think Starlinks are like here. They're more like in our atmosphere. So, yeah, we haven't had any satellite issues this week. Mind you, our dishes are also 3 meters plus, whereas the satellite Starlink dishes are like this, and so they're going to be susceptible to more noise because they're smaller. So, yeah, Starlink's LEO satellite or LEO, so they're low Earth orbit. Um, what exactly is low Earth orbit? Okay, so yeah, so they are 1,200 miles up. So a low Earth orbit is 1,200 miles. The ones we use are 22,000 miles. um, so yeah, we're a little bit further out. I don't doubt that this is true. They use a lot of different frequencies, and a lot of them are lower, and could easily be interfered with. Yes. So most satellites that any satellite that I'm going to use is going to be in the geostationary orbit, which is way up there, as opposed to the low Earth orbit like these. And again, I think if do I have a graphic? Bob sent me a graphic the other day that I thought was interesting. Let me go find it. So yeah, so the Northern Lights, which was were basically seen in the 150 miles, 60 miles to 150 miles up. So yeah, so um, if you're talking about interference, these are a lot closer, um, therefore more susceptible to interference. It is great for lower latency. Um, but as I like to point out, if I do a satellite shot with low latency encoding, and I'm looking at also a Dejero or a Live View or what's the third one? Live View, Dejero, TVU. I forgot there for a second. If I'm using a cellular backpack and it has any issues, it's going to go to about a 3 second delay, which is more time than a satellite shot is. So everyone who makes fun of the satellite latency, I would like you to go watch a Dejero live shot or a LiveView live shot in bad cellular conditions because it's worse than satellite. Hell, a lot of internet streaming is worse than satellite. Yes, TVU. LEO is great for data transmission, but not allowed for most companies. Yeah. We were looking at Starlink the other day about getting one to plug into a backpack as kind of a backup feed. They're kind of expensive for commercial usage, um, relatively speaking. um, yeah, no sat shaming here. And I've always said, I think, if you've watched my channel any time, I've always said use the right tool. And there are lots of times where, you know, a microwave shot or a satellite shot is the right tool. There's also times where if you want to go drive down the road, those tools will not work. They will never work if you're driving on the road. So therefore, you need to sell your backpack. If you're going out in the country, you know, you may want to sell a sat truck because your cell phone signal may not work. Or if you're in a crowd of people, your cell phone signal may not work. Oh, who was it the other day? Um, I it came up in Facebook memories from years ago. I forget what the event was, but basically it was a big breaking news event, and a major cable channel had their anchor live via a backpack, and at like 8:01 p.m. as the show was starting, there goes the anchor because the cellular network was so overwhelmed with whatever breaking news it was that they lost their live shot. And so it was a garbled mess of stuff, and I just took a freeze frame of it and, of course, posted it to Facebook like, hey, insert name of network news company. I think you can afford to use a satellite truck, and you might want to use one here because your live view just broke up on air. Starlink latency has come down quite a bit. Yeah, they had high latency at first, but in fairness, so have their speeds. Yeah, I've heard people comment now that basically what used to be a great product is no longer a great product because the speed's not there anymore because, well, everybody in their neighborhood is also using Starlink. You can now, oh, you can do bonded, you can bond Starlink or you can bond with Starlink. Like Starlink can be one of your sources. Is that what you're saying? I think that's what you're saying. No, no, you don't say so. I can't imagine. You can bond with Starlink. Okay. Um, all right. So, what else was I going to talk about? So, I talked about wireless, microwave, satellite, talked briefly about cellular. Um, Cellular just still bothers me to this day. Not because it's bad, I'm just because what it's kind of like Starlink. It it's amazing this thing works, but we come to rely on it, and then now I noticed a lot more, and I mean a lot more, dropped calls these days, just constantly. Like I mean, today someone called me and I couldn't hear them, and they had to call me back 10 minutes later when they were in a different area and had better reception. I haven't had that issue since like 2006, but all of a sudden it's happening constantly because reasons. There's a dead spot over here on my neighborhood. When we pull in, if we're on the phone between two different streets, almost every time that phone call will break up at that point, no matter what you're doing. And if you're streaming, like, you're listening to Spotify or whatever, it'll break up at that point. Like, there's a dead zone between like two streets where if you're on this road and you travel between these two streets, it just goes away. Like, no matter if you're on a voice call or you're using data, doesn't matter. There are horror stories on Reddit. I can only imagine. Oh yeah, no. if you if you are on HughesNet, Starlink is like buying a Ferrari. It is night and day, I'm sure. I'll stick with my $50 a month LTE connection that has more constant download and twice the upload. I'm curious. I mean, I know I'm in a basement, but I'm just I feel like doing a speed test because our results are our speed is just atrocious. And like I said, I understand I'm in a basement, but I'm on Verizon and I get 5 megs. Oh, nope. Now it's hit 6. 6.2 to be exact. I guess 6.3 is what it finalized at. And my upload speed is 0.11. Yeah. Can't really use that very well, can you? Yeah, anything. It's definitely, if you need it, Starlink is definitely the way to go. Steve says, T-Mobile's taking away my travel gateway. Well, Tony's not here, but I can tell you that Tony had T-Mobile and was definitely not impressed. So, get yourself a Peplink. You've got 5. Joe, I'm curious, can you share a link to what you're referring to? I mean, I know what Peplink is, but I'm curious what you have 5 of. And I had Hughes for free when I worked for Dish, and I still didn't use it. Yep, that's true. And Joe liked that one as well. Like I said, there's a dead spot. It's probably 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 12-ish houses away, maybe 15 houses away. Just complete dead zone. Your dad uses Peplink. Okay, so I'm just out of curiosity. I carry an AT&T device as well, so I always have 2 connections with me. But one's a cell phone, one's a Netgear hotspot. I'm going to turn this one on. I'm just going to curious to see what this does. All right, so let's take a look at this. Oh, so okay, so these are looks like custom built routers that have some cellular modems in them. Quite a bit of selection here. Is that a switch built into one? Yep, that's definitely a switch built into. That's cool. That has a lot of antennas. So many WAN options. And so many antennas. Holy crap. I feel like if these are all actively using, you're gonna have reliable internet. Built-in eSIM. Oh, you can run Docker on your router. I mean, I guess there's a use case for that. I don't know that there is one, but I'm sure there might be. That's a lot of radio connections. All right, so this, wow. Dual 2.5 gig WAN, 2 5G modems, an actual serial port. That's rare. USB 3, 8 cellular connections, Wi-Fi antennas, redundant SIM slots. That is one crazy looking router. Do I want to know what this thing cost? $2,500 is the cheapest one. Amazon will sell it to you for $2,900. Wow. Interesting. Interesting. I'm guessing you don't have that one, Joe. I'm guessing you probably have one like this. So take a SIM or an eSIM. That's good. This looks more like what I would probably be interested in for work. Interesting. And what does this one cost? Buy now. Or not. Alrighty, what does this one cost? Search Google. $500. That's not bad. I've definitely spent that money before on stuff for work. When we had to buy, what is our old ones called? They weren't Peplink. They were what's no, Cradle Point. That's what I'm thinking of. We bought Cradle Point for every truck. Um, so Joe says they do bonding. This was the Mr. Net. Oh, okay. The bonding works great. Has WAN smoothing, FEC. Yeah, your antennas need antennas. I'm installing one on my truck later this week with an antenna on my roof. Wait, you're allowed to cut a hole in your roof? Wasn't that an issue before? Magnet mount. That one is definitely overkill. Um, does it do Sims? Does it bond the Sims or swap? Joe says it does both. So you have the Transit Max Duo. Transit Max Duo LTE. Peplink Max Transit. $100. Wow. Okay, I haven't seen one of those connectors on a brand new device in quite a while. Interesting. Close some of these tabs. You have the Transit. Transit. What's the green connector for? Speed Fusion. That's what you're referring to earlier, I think. Yeah, Speed Fusion. Again, run your Docker on your router. There's your antennas. Oh, it does GPS too. Curious why it needs to know GPS. Two USB power sources. It has redundant power supply? Wow. Or does it need both? Hoping that's redundant. Wi-Fi 6. Well, Wi-Fi 6 is great if you actually can get that via your cellular connection, but I don't think you're going to get speeds like that via cellular. At least not around here, you won't. All right, I'm going to plug... Alrighty, so... You cut a hole in your dish truck. Oh, Fleet. You hear a buzz in the audio now? Really? That's interesting. Oh yeah, there's a buzz there. Well, hold on, let me just do my speed test real quick and then see what happens. That's really weird. So with AT&T, I'm getting 14 down instead of what, 6? So, and they're right next to each other. So, and then I get 5 up. Looks like this thing off. Obviously. Did the audio go? Did the noise go away? Yeah, looks like it. Wow. Okay. That was weird. I don't know. I'm not even plugged into the same thing as. Well, that was just weird. So this created crazy amounts of noise. If Ashley left you for that, then I don't know why it would have affected the stream. I'm not even going through. Yeah, that makes no sense. It probably is. Honestly, it probably is. It killed. How did it kill the stream? That makes no sense. Well, that was another throw that as list. Add that to the list of things that make no sense in my live streams. It was an EMI pulse. That makes no sense. It literally changed zeros to ones. Oh, that's funny. Alrighty, so back to our topic. We talked about wireless, microwave, satellite, cellular speeds, obviously. Um, there's obviously broadcast, which you got, your AM, FM, and TV. In terms of scale, AM can get you in theoretically nationwide coverage if you are a clear channel, which means you are a channel that has no other channels on your frequency. There's only a couple of those, but those things can go for a long ways. FM is more local, TV is local. There are some TV stations out there that have quite a bit of range, but even they don't cover more than a single state typically. And then, of course, there's the internet, which is, in theory, limitless in terms of distribution. But we got all kinds of internet protocols. I'm not going to get into those right now. I'm kind of feeling like wrapping this stream up, actually. Jay had hair before. Yeah, no, I did not have hair before. I haven't had hair since I was like 21. How long has he had spots? Why is there interference everywhere Jay goes? There's not interference everywhere I go. Black Cloud Jay. Yeah, no. So yeah, that's probably one thing I should talk about is propagation and the atmosphere. And the atmosphere can definitely bring bright colors, as in the northern lights most people saw their night. But also, it makes TV stations and radio stations go further because, as Steve points out, sometimes he can get Canadian channels when he's in Erie, Pennsylvania, or wherever. And a lot of times, channels will come in at night that won't come in during the day. And that's because the atmosphere plays a huge role, just like crowds do and all other stuff. So if you're going to do a transmission of any sort, you need to factor in what's the environment like? What's it going to be like now or later? Because if your event's later, you need to factor that in. And if it's at night versus day, some things work better at night than they do day. I will tell you for a fact that LED light bulbs can kill TV reception. So if you're planning on doing an event that has, and there's a whole bunch of LED light bulbs nearby, you may have issues with wireless frequencies because LED light bulbs are noisy. Worse than this. I'm just going to throw it out there. Yeah, I'll go back and listen. I heard a brief second of it when I opened up unmuted the stream and listened to it. But yeah. So anyway, so that's it. I basically wanted to just kind of talk about different forms of transmission. I like I said, I kind of threw this together last minute, so I don't exactly have pictures or whatever to show along with this. So maybe I'll put together an actual, I don't know, PowerPoint presentation sometime on this. It was like Jeremy's pre-show music. Jeremy has some interesting pre-show music, that's for sure. Let's check out current viewers 11, likes 13. That's always good. For the record, YouTube analytics show my stream was healthy the entire time. So I don't know what you guys were seeing when it was breaking up there, but according to YouTube, it was fine. You know how we can always trust YouTube. Oh, now there's 16 likes. So yes, so 11 viewers, 16 likes. I think that's a great stream. So what is next Monday is Memorial Day, right? I think it is. Is next Monday Memorial Day? Or is that in 2 weeks? That's in 2 weeks. So yeah, so next Monday I should be here unless something comes up. I don't currently have any idea for topics. I've actually today was one of those events that until Joe mentioned something in our Signal chat that I didn't really have a topic for a stream. So if you have any suggestions for streams, I would love to see them, either now or comment on the video after the fact. If you're watching after the fact, I appreciate you being here. I stream most Mondays at 9 p.m. Eastern. Sometimes that falls into Tuesday. Sometimes I just skip a week. It depends. But usually Mondays at 9 p.m. Hopefully you enjoyed the stream. Hopefully all of you who are watching enjoyed it. I'm missing something in the chat. Jeremy says, I use what I can get for free. You don't even need to go to a rave. Oh, yeah. Interface tracks. That's interesting. All right. So like I said, I hope you all had a great night. Hopefully you all enjoyed the stream. A stream about converting 120 to DC. I did that for projects in college. I assume you mean 120 volts AC? Or is that a reference to the noise earlier? I think it was a reference to the noise, wasn't it? Well, see, you just take a bunch of these and you plug them. No. Anyway, again, hopefully you all enjoyed it. I will see you guys hopefully next week. Thank you all for being here. You all have a good night.